So today we're going to be drawing Mimikyu. He's a kind of a Pokemon that sort of pretends to be Pikachu, and this was by request. So we're going to be drawing, starting from just a pencil to all the way through to watercolor and ink, because I kind of wanted to show my own process. I've taped down my paper. This is to ensure that as it gets wet it doesn't buckle and then stay buckled. It's easier if you tape it down first. I'm just using a couple different kinds of masking tape to do so. So Mimikyu starts out with kind of an angular, like roundish sort of head, but not really, more angular than round. I notice that his ears are kind of all over the place because he's pretending to be Pikachu, but he's not Pikachu. Like he's in costume. I'm sure whoever is watching this knows exactly what I'm talking about and doesn't need me to explain it any further, really. So I like to start a sketch just kind of sketching lightly and slow. I take my time and I think about the angles that I'm using. So because he's kind of wearing a costume and it's not really his skin that we're drawing right now, there are a lot of folds, a lot of little creases in the fabric, and that I'm trying to get across. And that's why you'll see me make these little lines here and here. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm doing that. I try to think about like how big the head is versus the body. Is the body about the same size or is it a little longer? In this case I think he's about the same, so roughly there is where I'm aiming to stop when I draw his body. So the great thing about pencil is it can be erased, and so I tend to make a lot of little jerky motions with my pencil as I go that do not really translate once I change to ink. With ink I do my best to make just a single smooth line, not lifting my brush or my pen, depending on what I'm using for that. So I'm not sure how super accurate I'm being, but I'm sure it's getting across anyway. So whatever, it's all good. There's really no mistakes with art. Like Bob Ross said, you know, only happy little accidents. So I try to have that kind of a mindset. So I'm not super happy with this line, so I'm going to change it. Now, something I really enjoy about this particular Pokemon is that his face is actually down here, but, you know, because he's pretending to be a Pokemon, he like hand draws a crayon or something, this amazing fake face. I'm just rough drawing it in here because we're going to work on that more with ink, but for right now, you know. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. It doesn't take me very long usually to make a really quick sketch like this. So next, I like to go with a very thin pen if I can. So in this case I'm going to be using Micron 05 Tiny Nib. I don't know if you can see that very well. to just go over the lines I like, that I want to keep. I try not to press too hard, but in all honesty, I totally press too hard. And so I go through these pens maybe a little faster than I should. So you might notice I'm adding a little more, like a few more of these extra lines than I actually had with the pencil. I just sort of make that decision on the fly. I also tend to go completely silent when I'm drawing, because I find it easier to draw than talk, so I don't generally speak while I'm drawing, which may, if you're trying to learn how to do this from me, might mess you up a little. I'm sorry. So I'm coloring in the eyes here using this pen, but you might notice that I'm not, well, I guess this isn't a really good video for explaining this part, but I don't always take the time to color everything in really well with my pen. I like to use actual ink for that sort of thing. The only reason I'm really using pen for it this time, for these little tiny details there, is that it's a very small spot, those little eyes. And indeed, after I've painted, I might go back with actual ink and kind of change that up a little bit. Changes for me every time, but so with this part, you know, I'm just making it as scribbled as I can, sort of just, doesn't have to be perfect. It's better if it's not perfect, in fact, because that's sort of the way of this Pokemon, right? Trying to put my pen on backwards. Okay, so next I take my eraser. This is just it's a standard eraser, like you see those white ones everywhere. This is a black version of that same thing. You just take a rubber eraser, something gentle on your paper. I'm using watercolor paper. At the moment I'm actually using, this is Canson Montevale paper, I guess. I don't really have a favorite paper anymore, because from what I gather, my favorite paper company went under. So I'm exploring by trying out a bunch of different papers, and that's okay. So right now this is Canson. I don't know how it'll turn out. This is the first time I've used it. So with using watercolor, I like to first wet my brush and then just kind of dab it on whatever I have handy to dry it with, which in this case is a tiny square of paper towel. I'm using, I don't know all the names of my colors. It's just not, I don't know, not part of my process really to pay attention to that sort of thing, but at this time, this is a yellow ochre, and then I thought I would use this medium yellow, this nice medium yellow, which is a mystery medium yellow. It says G269. I want to say it's Van Gogh, but it might be something else. I don't completely 100% recall. I'm mixing these two colors together because I kind of want an in-between shade. And then I'm going to give a generous amount of water because I want an in-between shade that's really kind of watered down. So I usually keep a paper up here just to test to see, you know, if the paint I mixed is where I want it to be, and it is. So I'm going to go ahead and start coloring it in. I like to kind of pick a corner or a top, or in this case an ear, and work my way down. Sometimes I angle my paper, but I don't think I'm going to this time because it's a very small piece. To angle my paper, I usually just prop up one end of my board that I have it taped to with like maybe the roll of tape, or, you know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I don't purchase fancy art easels and things like that just for doodles like this. Although you can. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those. It's simply that that shouldn't be a boundary if you're deciding to art. You should never have to, you know, if you're going to spend a bunch of money, gadgetry is not really the thing. It's more spend it on your paper and your paint. Paint is kind of like a long-term investment because some of the paint I'm using even today is the original stuff I purchased back when I first started years and years ago. So it lasts a long time depending on the color. If you use it a lot, obviously you're going to go through it a lot, but it's worth getting the best you can purchase at the time. So I put on just a layer of the first color. I'm going to use, this is kind of cheating, but I'm going to use my blow dryer. So using a blow dryer has pros and cons depending on what you're doing. Sometimes the art we're creating needs a little more gentleness, like it needs to be able to dry and kind of bloom and do its own thing. And using the blow dryer can change that. But at this time, we're just gonna, you know, whip through this pretty quick. So now I'm gonna use the same color I just used to make some shading. Just anywhere I feel like it's probably a little darker. I'm just gonna add another layer. If you're interested in getting deeper into shading and things like that, there's a lot of interesting YouTube tutorials on how to do it, but something that's always stuck with me that I'm not even using right this moment, so it's maybe a bad example, but if you are shading something that's kind of a warm color, then the shadows should be a cool color. And if you're shading something that's a cool color, then it should be shading with a warm color. So for example, if I was using red, then using a cool blue would be a great way to shade. And if I was using blue, obviously, then a red or maybe a purple. This is a yellow, and well, there's a lot of different kinds of yellow, so I'm not even going to get into that right now. It's a little beyond the scope of this particular thing. It gets complicated. So as you can see, I'm just kind of dropping a little extra color in where I feel like it's going to be extra dark, like right near that head and under the cheek area. This is going to bloom up a little bit because I'm just putting little dots of paint, and so it spreads out on its own, makes what's called blooms. Now I'm going to blow dry it again. So I like the idea of this guy having these little blooms and such because it gives kind of like a watermark. Well, it is a watermark. It gives the impression of almost like a dirtiness to the quality of the fabric that he's made or her, that they have made their costume out of. And I like that. I like the idea of it being a little dirty, because I mean, if it wears it all the time. Okay, so next, this tail is going to be kind of a dark brown. So I've added more yellow ochre, and then I like to add quinacridone violet to yellow ochre, because both of those colors on palettes tend to make kind of a muddy color. But when you add them together and it works, it's awesome. And because they are kind of both notorious for making a muddy color, when I use them together, it feels like I'm using two impossible colors in an impossible combination, and that's fun to me. I think it's hilarious. So that's quite light. I didn't test first. See how I usually test up here with my color. But that's okay. I'm gonna go in and darken up my palette a little. So next what I want to do is empty one of my water things. And then what I do is I take some of my ink. I generally don't shake it first. It's this is Amsterdam acrylic ink in oxidized black. I'm not brand loyal at this time, although I must admit, of the inks that I have, I've tried Winsor & Newton, and I've also tried Bombay India ink. This ink has been the nicest that I've used so far. I would definitely purchase it again. So if you're looking for ink specifically, also I'm using a Zero Princeton Neptune brush, a round brush. So I'm going pretty quick here because my ink does tend to dry, and I'd like to get this done before that happens. So I'm just going over just the outside lines. And any little shape differences that I see that I could change, that I want to change, this is now the time to do it. I find just outlining the outside of a piece really helps make it pop. Makes something magic happen. The tape holding my camera up to my terrible fake rig that I've got set up is making a noise. It's making me kind of nervous. I'm a little worried that the camera might fall. But it is what it is, you know. Hopefully we get through this video before that happens. Using ink covers a wider area much better than using a pen. So, like, a pen has its place, but this area right here that I'm currently coloring in, this is an example of the perfect spot on this particular painting where a pen would have been less good, because it's a lot of black to fill in, and it would have maybe ended up looking kind of streaky. You'd be able to see the strokes of the pen, whereas with ink you usually can't, and that's something nice. I find is kind of, it's something I really enjoy experiencing, is when the fill color kind of just glides. I don't know, it's like scissors, gliding your scissors, you know? Same sort of feeling. Okay, we're almost done. So with using a brushed ink, I find that pressing as lightly as I possibly can gets a much better result, but it is so difficult to do. Maybe I'm making it look easy right now, but I've had several years of actual practice with exactly this. Alright. I could darken, you know, the pen marks on his face, but I kind of like that it almost looks less real if I don't do that. Also, if I use just a little bit of ink in the bottoms of the eyes, it makes it look like they're actual eye holes, in my opinion. It's a really subtle thing that pretty much no one but me is going to notice, other than you, because I just told you. Okay, and thank you for watching.